Hello and welcome to the Chicago School of Professional Psychology's weekly wellness break. Self-care is always important for maintaining our health and wellness and can be a way to connect with your community. During these unprecedented times, self-care is more important than ever. To that end, our outstanding faculty are sharing their expertise with you via these weekly wellness breaks outside of the classroom. Today, we have Dr. Laird Bridgman from our Irvine, California campus. Dr. Bridgman is an assistant professor in the clinical psychology department. He is a licensed psychologist, a certified employee assistance professional, and a fellow in the Academy of Cognitive and Behavioral Therapies. His private practice is in Lake Forest. Please join us while Dr. Bridgman presents strategies for breaking the worry habit during the pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. I want to welcome everybody that's joining us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you are well and adjusting to what shall we call the new normal that is the world and the state of things today. But these phenomenon that we're experiencing nationally, communities, and worldwide with the pandemic and with the let's say the social injustice awareness that is finally coming into focus and gives us a little bit of something else to focus our attention on other than a worldwide pandemic. But either of those things in and of themselves, much less both of them together, are certainly adequate to generate worry in even normal people. In fact, there was an article that I saw just this morning on the 8 a.m. news that there's an annual study of happiness of Americans, a survey, and it's been ongoing for the past 50 years, and it's been going annually since 9/11. And as of this year's survey, which is just recently here, the happiness rate for Americans is at the lowest it has been in the past 50 years, and it's half of what it was a year ago. We have a number of other indicators of the severity, the impact of the COVID crisis in particular. The month from the end of February to the end of March, and the end of March is when the World Health Organization announced formally the pandemic, and the United States particularly announced the state of national emergency, et cetera. But all of the news was breaking in that month leading up to that. And during that month, the prescriptions for insomnia in particular, but also mood disorders in general, increased by over 20%. And you might think, well, that makes sense. Of course it would increase. You would expect that. But what makes it kind of particularly bad is the contextual fact that the trend over the past 4 years had been a decrease in those prescription rates. So not only did things get worse, it stopped a downward trend and then reversed itself. So we know that things are having a very negative impact on people, and we need to be very intentional in our attempts to manage our own stresses, as well as to try and help others around us. We kind of going to get through this thing best together, I think is the way to think about it. When I'm doing presentations, I always like to start with inspiring or content appropriate quotation of some kind. And so my quote that I ran across that just happened to come to me as things do this week was, optimism is the faith that leads to achievement, and nothing can be done without hope and confidence. And you can think of all kinds of people who might have said that, but I think it's really interesting that the person who actually said it was Helen Keller. And I think I'm pretty sure all of you know who Helen Keller was. And amongst other things, an activist for people with disabilities and promoting for social change. So I think it's appropriate in so many ways. But one of the things that we'll talk about towards the end, as we get into the specifics of breaking the worry habit, is that hope and confidence are important replacements for worry and mistrust. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a couple things real quick. We're going to go over just a quick definition so that we're all on the same page with what worry is and what it's not. And then we're going to talk about the impact of worry and why people worry. And then we're going to talk about the tools that we can use to break a habit, or if we're just stuck in a particular loop, even if we're not like chronic worriers. So there should be a little something for everybody today. So let's jump right into it. So what is worry? Well, technically worry is a coping strategy. The problem is it's a very ineffective coping strategy because by definition, worry actually does not produce any change. It doesn't make anything different, doesn't make anything better. In fact, it makes most things worse. A lot of people believe that when they worry that they are safer, that they're more prepared, that they're better in whatever ways, but all indicators in terms of research and its impact on people are negative. Excuse me, I have to close the window next to me because I'm getting a lot of outside noise here. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. When we worry, we have a autonomic nervous system arousal increase. And that's the system that's associated with our fight, flight, or freeze response. And so therefore, our brain is interpreting our state of being whenever we're worrying as if we're in danger. And then that, of course, increases our stress levels. And everybody knows that high sustained stress levels are bad for the body, the mind, and the soul. And there's a whole bunch of information about that. I wish I could go through some of that today, but we just don't have time. I'm going to be moving quickly through these points, but most all this information is available in a variety of places, including tons of YouTube videos. But if you need any specific resources, or if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with any information that you need. All right, so we've defined worry as an attempt to cope, and that it's ineffective, and that it has negative outcomes in all kinds of ways. If you have a situation or a problem, past or future, whatever, and you're thinking about that thing, and that leads to some kind of a insight, awareness, change, whatever, then that's contemplation. And that's good. You know it's contemplation if it produces change and you're done with it, you move on. If you start to make a second lap, particularly a third lap, I don't really mind the first two laps. You go through the thing, you think about it, you make your plan, and then you make one more lap through it just to make sure you've covered everything, and that's fine. But if you go on the third lap around the thing, you're pretty much guaranteed that that's a worry lap. Now you're double checking and triple checking. And then it's an endless loop where you pursue every possible scenario that you can imagine. And that's how you wind up getting kind of stuck in this thing. One of the difficulties with worry is the misappropriation of an actual really positive part of human beings, and that's our creative side, and it's founded in our imagination. So humans have this ability to imagine things. So we can imagine the past, we can remember it, we can imagine the past that we didn't live, but we heard about, and we can learn from history. Everybody knows about learning important lessons from history. So that's a good thing. And we can imagine the future. For example, people can imagine things that don't exist yet. I saw a documentary once about the impact of Star Trek on current culture. And it's all over the place and in ways that we don't even understand. One of the pieces was an interview with a series of a variety of scientists, everywhere from physics and microbiology to astrophysics and astrology, everything, the whole thing. And one of them said that as a child, he was captivated with the idea of that little communicator that in the original series with William Shatner that they had. So at that time, nobody could imagine a little device you could hold in your hand and you could flip it open and you could talk instantly to somebody who is thousands of miles away from you, instantly, synchronously, right? And that particular person was key in inventing this little thing that we all carry now, which While they no longer flip open, I mean, I guess you can still find one, but they don't flip open anymore for the most of us. It's still basically that notion, and it was inspired by somebody's imagination. So the problem with imagination in case of using it for worry is that that part of our brain that responds to fear or danger, it doesn't have a sense of time. So it doesn't understand the thing you're thinking about is something from the future that hasn't happened yet or something from the past that's already happened. And believe me, if the thing is happening in the moment, you're not worrying at all. You're too busy reacting. You don't have time to worry in the moment. So by definition, worry only exists when we're thinking about something that does not exist. And that's one of the other issues why worry is bad, is because it takes us out of the present. And there's a phenomenon about human beings that we can imagine the future. I call that futurizing. Those of you that are literary can see the next one coming. And we can also imagine the past, and we call that pasteurizing. And when you're pasteurizing and futurizing, you're not being in the present. And if you think about how much time any individual, or certainly a lot of people, spend in worry, then that's a lot of time that we're not in the present. Well, so here's the thing, human beings do not exist in the past, and we do not exist in the future. So our only opportunity to truly be happy or joyful, or even just at the least content, is in the moment. And that's a linear moment that keeps moving. So the more time we spend ahead of us or behind us, then we're kind of being robbed of the ability to be happy. And the medical research goes along with that. Effect on the brain is negative, the ability to deal with stress and the challenges of life decrease the more time we spend in worry. So the very first thing that we need to do if we want to start breaking the worry habit is we have to stop looking at worry as a friend, as an effective tool. We have to begin looking at it as an enemy. It's not just a neutral party. It's not a sometimes helper. It is always, always negative, detrimental, and it's robbing you and your family and everybody around you of happiness and contentment and joy. And just a little comment about happiness. If you want to know how to be happy, you first have to learn how to be content. And because long-standing happiness is built on a foundation of contentment. There's another whole 2 hours worth of conversation about that we could do. So some of the things that we can do to kind of help break that worry habit is, first you have to come on board and fully buy into the idea that worry is not your friend. So you have to become self-aware, and then you have to catch yourself when you're worrying, and then you have to stop yourself from worrying. There's a general principle of human behavior that if you want to have people give up something bad, they need to replace it with something better. So here are some things that are better that you can do. So one of those is a worry log, and a worry log is just like it sounds. So you just keep a log, a tally of every time during a day that you worry. You could do this at the end of the day, you could do it several times through the day, and all we're really documenting is the fact of worry. You can document a little bit more if you're motivated, but if it means that you won't wind up doing the log, then don't, just make it a pure tally. But you can also document, what and when and what was going on or whatever, just for a little bit of more information. And that works off the principle that if you observe a behavior, you change behavior. So I have plenty of clients that I've worked with where just doing the worry log is enough to increase that self-awareness so that then they're able to make a better choice for themselves in each moment. And then over time, we break the habit. Another is a more intense version of that. It's called the focused worry session. And a focused worry session is kind of like what it sounds. So you're going to sit down at a table, a desk, and it's best if you have old-fashioned paper. I guess you might remember this stuff. It's made from wood pulp. And you need a tool, you need a pen or a pencil to write on it with. Doing it typing on a digital device is second best. So if you don't have paper or you're not willing to write on it, fine, do it digitally. But the research is very clear that there's a bunch of things that happen when we write on paper that on the one hand, we don't get all of those activated when we're typing. And on the other hand, that we don't do any of that, either of those, when we're sitting and thinking about a thing. And that's what happens for people and how they get stuck in worry is they sit and think about it. And what happens is you get the emotional center in your brain overactive and the rational center is actually underactive if you look at fMRI scans of the brain when people are worrying. So when we write things out, we're using a whole bunch of different parts of the brain and we're activating that rational center from a variety of different angles. So what you do is you set a timer, 5 or 10 minutes for your worry session. And then you just write your topic at the top of your page and you just scribble and worry as fast and as hard as you can. We don't want to spend time editing or forming sentence structures or worrying about punctuation. You just want to dump it all down on paper and just let it go, because it's not going to be something that you or anybody else needs to read. So it doesn't really matter if your handwriting is legible or not, and certainly not if your grammar is correct. Nobody cares. Don't worry about that either. So in all my close to 3 decades of practice here, I think I've had one person that managed to worry in writing for a little over 20 minutes. Now that's a grand thing if you think about how many hours you spend in worry when you're not writing something out. So it's a really effective tool for breaking that worry habit. So let's say you set the timer for 10 minutes and you got to the end of 10 minutes, timer goes off and you're not done yet. Okay, reset the timer, try for another 10 and repeat until you're done. You'll know you're done when you're done. You just run out of energy for the writing and you can feel the worry is gone. All right, and so then the next best thing after that then is to move your brain onto something happy, something good, something interesting, because the brain's going to want to have a kind of an undertow. It's going to want to go back to the thing you're worried about. And it's going to take a little bit of time for that to wash out. But over time, as you repeat using these tools, then it gets better and better. Because basically we're tearing down old neural pathways, we're letting them go dark, and we're building new neural pathways to create these new habits. Another tool that's really effective are the mindfulness and diaphragmatic breathing exercises. There's a ton of information and YouTube videos on why and how to do them. There's even some of the wellness breaks that were done with guided meditations and guided breathing exercises. So those are available for you as well if you'd like to go to those. Another one that's been helpful for people is if you have a spiritual formation of any kind, activating your spirituality is an important replacement for worry. So some people conceptualize worry from a spiritual standpoint as a failure to trust God or your higher power, or gods in plural, if you're from a polytheistic perspective. What I have patients do is just kind of have a prayer visualization thing where they identify the thing they're worried about. They image it in their imagination as a symbol or a memory or a person or whatever. And then we put that person or memory or symbol in a imaginary box and wrap it up with a pretty bow. And then in prayer, you give it to God and you kind of let him take it, trusting that an omnipotent being has more power than we do to control things that we can't control, like the future and the past. Just kind of image that as he takes it or she takes it, however you conceptualize God, that it just kind of disappears into and through your God. And that as you see that leaving, you feel the weight lifting off of you, and you walk away feeling refreshed and energized, and then you walk towards something good and positive to put your mind on to keep the focus going that way. And then in general, and particularly also for those of you who are from an atheist or agnostic perspective, you can also just generally focus on increasing your happiness. And that's kind of positive psychology, which is wonderful adjunct to our standard psychological practices. But here's a list of things that you can do to increase happiness. So a lot of research shows that movement is the single most effective, immediate mood elevator. So just movement, not like exercise, just movement. So just get up and move, walk from one side of the room to the other and back. You'll instantly feel better. if you elevate that into exercise, the benefits just multiply exponentially. So movement, exercise, if you can. Another thing to do that's very different is to help other people. And this is helping them in a physical or practical way. So whether that's a phone call, an encouragement, or just being a listening ear, or whether it's fixing a leaky faucet in their house. There's plenty of research that shows that when people help other people, that activates the pleasure center of the brain. We get a little dopamine kick, and that's all good for feeling happy. Another thing you can do is donate to a charity. Okay, so giving money is actually shown when you're giving it to a cause you believe in. That's also shown to increase happiness. So that's a good thing you can do. Increasing your social contact with others is really important. We are social beings by nature. I know there are a few of us, including my daughter, who insists that she's an introvert and doesn't need other people. But we all need some amount of connectivity with other people, some less than others. But keep an eye on your social connection meter. It's very difficult in these times to connect with others, so we might have to go to a little bit of extra effort to make those connections. But please, be mindful of current guidelines for social distancing practices and make sure they keep you and yourself and others safe as you do that. And connection in any way, even this way, is better than not connecting at all. So just trying to do that with what you can. The last thing is a little more challenging, but I think over time it is probably one of the things that will pay off the best in the long run. And that's controlling the space between your ears. There's research, for example, that shows that the things that we experience during the day become the fodder for our dreams at night. Excuse me. And if the more we are experiencing negative events during the day and we're focusing on those events, then the more likely we're to have sleep disturbance at night. And disrupted sleep is really, really good way to get miserable. So maintaining a good day as best you can. So if you have negative things that you happen, deal with them as best you can, and then try and offset them. So do something to create a positive, good thing for yourself. I know it's not always possible, like tragedies happen and you just kind of have to survive it. But as soon as you can, get into a space where you can start creating new memories, good memories, happy memories, even if they're small things. It doesn't matter how big they are. It's kind of the consistency throughout the day that's kind of a key thing. There's some research that shows by a psychologist from UC Riverside that in terms of the variables that account for the variance of happiness, nearly half of the variance is contributable to our daily experiences in life. So that's why it's very important that we maintain our kind of thumb on our pulse of how our day is going, and that we try to live with intentionality through our day. There is, one kind of final reminder. In order to break the worry habit, you have to believe that worry is no longer your friend. So if you think about it this way, because we talked about worry is something that we do only about things that we have no control over, the issue is control, or the opposite of that, which is not feeling powerless, because that's really what's happening to us when we're worried about something in the future or the past, is that we don't like that feeling of powerlessness. So we're trying to self-medicate our mood by engaging in worry. And how does that happen? Well, because worry gives us the illusion of control in the midst of the uncontrollable. And that happens, it works, because it gives us something to do when in fact we can actually do nothing. So as a reminder, worry is not your friend, worry is your enemy, happiness is your friend, contentment is your friend. Focus on building more of that in your life and do the best you can to help others do the same. And we'll all get through this much happier and much better. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope some of what I've shared has been happy. And again, if you need any resources or additional information, please feel free to reach out. And I wish you all continued wellness and happiness, and make it a good day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for joining us today for the Chicago School of Professional Psychology Weekly Wellness Break, and thank you to Dr. Bridgman for sharing your expertise. You will be able to find today's Wellness Break on YouTube and all of the Chicago School of Professional Psychology's social media sites. Please share with friends, family, and those in your social network who may benefit from these resources. Next week, Dr. Guy Ballas from our Los Angeles campus will guide us through a mindfulness meditation. Until next time, stay well and know we are here to support you.